light. Shadows creep and crawl with every scream. Hear the echoes call. Synths and guitars in a haunting blend. An 80s vibe where the terror transcends. Shocktoberfest, scream until dawn. In your nightmares, the terror's reborn. Lights flash, monsters take flight. Embrace the darkness, it's a metal night.
Welcome all you Fright fans to another edition of Shocktoberfest, and this year we're doing an 80s rewind on Dragonfire Entertainment. With 31 days of horror films, it was kind of hard to even out the years of 1980 to 1989, so each year is getting 3 films except for one. One is going to get 4 because of that odd number. So now we're going to begin with 1980. For day 1, I decided, with 1980 having its ups and downs of horror films, I decided a psychological thriller would be a good way to start. Today's movie is going to be The Changeling. This movie is very interesting with its psychological horror, as a music professor named John Russell is taking his wife and daughter through upstate New York. They have car issues. As they're pushing their car through the snow, another car and a truck lose control, have an accident, and unfortunately, the mother and daughter do not survive. After the passing of his daughter and wife, John moves to Seattle a few months later, where he takes on a teaching position as a music professor at a college. He meets up with some old friends, and they introduce him to a real estate agent who gets him into a very big house that hasn't been upkept in 12 years, and he feels a little suspicious about it, as he should, because while he is moving into this house, a lot of supernatural situations are occurring, weird noises, a piano not working properly, even his daughter's croquet ball is bouncing around mysteriously. He decides to bring his friends over where they perform a seance and they start hearing noises. And as they're hearing these noises, they record it. They find out that a young boy had passed away previously, decades ago. And the more that John looks into it, he finds out that the senator in the area had a son that was ill. He drowned him in a bathtub and found a boy at an orphanage to replace his handicapped child that is no longer alive, and sends him off to Europe. When he comes back, he's healthy, he's doing fine, and a lot of this had to deal with money, all about inheritance. As John finds out more about this, he finds family heirlooms of the dead son and presents it to the senator saying, "Why did you do this? You knew you did this." And eventually the spirit consumes his father and the house implodes, and John has to save other people that have been haunted throughout this film. That's the best way I can describe this one. It's interesting, and usually on day 1 of Shocktoberfest, whatever movie it is, I don't want to give too much away, especially if it's one that not a lot of people may have seen. It is a rather well-known horror film to a lot of people in the group of horror fans. However, I'll be honest, I remember seeing it one time years ago, but I don't remember the plot. So I decided to put this on the list, and it's interesting. It really is. And we're going to delve into the things that, personally, I like and don't like about this film. I'm going to start off with the cast. We have a fairly decent lineup of people that were, I won't say necessarily legendary actors and actresses, but they're well known. And with the star being George C. Scott, who has been in countless movies. One in particular of my favorites was Dr. Strangelove. That was one of my favorite performances of George C. Scott, but we're going to move on to the other people that are in this film. We also have Trish Vanderveer, we have Jean Marsh, we also have Melvin Douglas, and also Barry Morse. And there are other people in this film that the names I wasn't quite familiar with, but I do appreciate their performances as well, especially when it comes to the psychological horror in the story of said film. I appreciate the simplicity, especially due to the fact of the concept of the supernatural, or someone that has unfinished business. And the twist ending of the fact that the person with unfinished business that's no longer alive was taken out of the world by a parent. Me being a parent now, it makes me very, very tense, because that concept of why would you do something like that to someone from your family, much less someone that looks up to you, that is supposed to rely on you. And also, especially due to the fact of the illness that this child had when his father decided that he no longer wanted this child in his life, and then have him replaced. And the whole concept of the revenge, in a way, I do appreciate. Now, when it comes to the things that I don't like, I feel a lot of it was the pacing of the film that really threw me off a little bit, because they do have to give enough plot for the character of John Russell, because of the fact that he is a man who is grieving the loss of his own family. And then you also find out more regarding the concept of why this house is haunted. And then when you bring that part into the film, especially into the plot, because of what you've been told in the beginning, so now you have to separate what's more important: the man's journey after loss, or the man's journey of knowledge. And for me, I was put between a rock and a hard place on that one, because we didn't get enough time to really invest in our main character's loss and journey. And unfortunately for me, that really roughed up my attention span. The main focal point of what I didn't like was, even though I say this movie was simplistic, they had a lot of nods and inspiration of how this movie was going to play out, whether it would be the psychological or the supernatural, because this movie definitely, for me, felt like if you took Amityville Horror, The Exorcist, and Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho and you put them in a blender. Now, when you give inspiration and nods, it's one thing, and I've said before, if you completely rip them off, that's a whole other can of worms. This one wasn't a rip-off. This was very much instilling a lot of ideas. And even with the simplicity of the plot, when it came to the style of psychological versus supernatural, I had a very difficult time trying to decipher between the two. And that definitely, with my attention span, it roughed it up. But however, I digress, and we're going to go into grading this film. This is actually a very well thought out movie, even with some of the hiccups of not knowing where it was going with its concept. Now, in the interest of fairness, this being the first movie in this lineup, for my grade, rewatchability-wise too, I could rewatch this again, because this is definitely one of those movies that if you have your attention span skewed a little bit, you might miss something. And I probably did miss a few things. However, that doesn't take away the fact that the moments that were terrifying, even when you didn't see a lot, which that is a good factor in some of my thoughts of horror movies, what you don't see, especially whether it's grotesque violence or even the supernatural forces, makes it that much more terrifying. And for The Changeling, the grade I'm giving it is a B-. Like I mentioned, it is not a horrible movie, it is not a mid-grade movie. It's not the greatest movie, but it's definitely one that I would recommend you watch, especially during the October and Halloween season. Well, we hope you enjoyed day one of Shocktoberfest 80s Rewind. If you've seen this movie and you agree with me, leave a thumbs up. If not, I understand. There is a comment section below. If there are certain things that you liked that I didn't like, you can put a comment in that section below, and you know what? It'll be great for me to understand where you're coming from. I do enjoy talking with other people that are fan of film, especially when it comes to the horror genre. Apart from that, we hope you share on social media, but most importantly, push that little red button and ring the bell for instant notifications. I do have a goal this year that I was thinking about doing. My subscriber count has been very low, especially for doing this for about 8 years. I want to see by the end of 2025 to get at least 500 subscribers. I would really love to see more people see this content, and not just that, give back to those that have been around for the longest time, because I appreciate it. I always have, and I always will. Until then, I'm Wildman Wes, and we will see you next time for day 2 of Shocktoberfest 80s Rewind. Take care, and as always, stay scared, kiddies.